Sie hören Sport und Musik.
Das Spiel ist aus! Deutschland ist Weltmeister!
Mario Götze! Mario Götze!
Tonight, whether you call it football, or soccer, a German American and a German in America dare to call it foosball. German foosball from an American point of view. Let's add some buns to that hamburger and join them for the Schnitzel Boys Deutschland Hour.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's it. We're back.
We're back. 2024. I'm excited.
A new year. People pretend that things change, but really, how much really changes?
Nothing.
Not that much. Not that much. And certainly not us. We're still here. Schnitzel Boys, Monday night. I was very excited to see you today.
Me too. I was excited to do that.
But then now it's a little bit of there's a little bit of a downer because der Kaiser died.
That's right. I felt exactly the same way. We had a little bit of a holiday hiatus.
Yeah.
Maybe even longer than we did last year. And I was excited to talk to you again. I love Monday Night Schnitzel Night. But yeah, I woke up this morning. I went on Kicker, usually to do my German football check-in. Great source. And it was just the Kaiser is tot.
Yeah.
And it's all over the news, and there's homages. Even ESPN did a little homage. You know, everyone's pulling a little homage out of their butt. And I figure, let's pull an homage of our butts too.
We got
Kaiser
homages out of
rest. Yeah. I mean, if it's done day up. So I was just telling you, there's a huge 90-minute documentary on German TV tonight about their Kaiser. So their timing was excellent because he died yesterday.
Wow.
He died on der Kaiser, Franz Beckenbauer, died on Sunday. His family told everybody today, Monday.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I guess, dealing with health issues privately for the last couple of years. It's funny, Bjorn. So I went. It's funny. He's like, the universe works in mysterious ways, I would say. Would you agree? I disagree.
Yeah, I would agree.
So we had our friend Uli Hesse on about a year ago, and he wrote this great Franz Beckenbauer book, and I bought it, but it's been, I haven't gotten to it right away. And then over the holiday season, I finally started reading it, and it's a great book. Uli Hesse is such a great writer.
He had interesting things to say about him too when we talked to him. Yeah, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, which I brought up, and it's touched on in his book, and I'm not 100% done with this book, but about 2/3 done with this book, and it's a great book. And then I visit my parents over the holidays around that same time. And I didn't tell them I was reading a Franz Beckenbauer book. But for whatever reason, Franz Beckenbauer came up in conversation with me and my parents. And I think my dad just asked, what's he up to? Where is he? And I'm like, he hasn't really been in the public eye over the last few years. He's been away. He had that thing, like he's had those complications and with his FIFA scandal and stuff. We can talk about that in a bit.
Right.
But and I said, oddly enough, I'm reading Franz Beckenbauer's biography. So he's just in the ethos for some reason, randomly. He's just in the ethos. There's no reason he's out and about. I didn't talk about where he was last year. For whatever reason, this year we asked, where's Franz Beckenbauer? And then cut to today, a week later or 2 weeks later, he passed away. And he's in the news, and now we know where Franz Beckenbauer is. And I reached out to my parents. I told them, funny, we talked about him. He passed away. And then I mentioned the documentary, and they're watching the documentary, and I'm going to watch a documentary about him. It's like a in-depth look at Franz and things like that, and his life. And it's just interesting how he's in the ethos. The world kind of knew something was up with that. The Franz Beckenbauer was maybe on his last legs. And then for an athlete, 78 is very young.
Yeah, he's not super. I mean, some people are running for president at that age.
Yeah, and running their second term at that age. Yeah, no, I know. I guess if you're an athlete, it doesn't really matter because as a professional athlete, you can really abuse your body in your younger years, and maybe that has some long-term effects that maybe we don't realize. I don't know what he died of, but I do know, speaking of this biography, that the NASL days, although good for him, playing on American AstroTurf in the 70s wrecked his legs. He really couldn't play much after that.
Oh, is that true? Okay.
Yeah. He had a stint when his days at NASL were done. He went to go play for Hamburg in one of his lesser known parts of his career, one of his more quiet parts of his careers. He played for HSV for 2 seasons, I think, maybe 3. And he was still world class, but the dude had some pretty wrecked knees at that point because of Giant Stadium, and because of that, he's the AstroTurf in Texas and things like that. That's just a clue to maybe whatever other health stuff he had. But yeah, Franz Beckenbauer has passed away. Bjorn,
Yeah.
You were around more in Germany in the day.
That's right. I'm older. I am I mean, he's pretty exactly my parents' age generation. So definitely was somebody who followed me. I mean, I was a little bit my first World Cup memory is 78, where he was not on the national team anymore. So I sort of missed his prime. I don't remember him as a player. As a player, I remember him at the Cosmos, where they would they would show little clips on Die Sportschau of Franz Beckenbauer playing on some football field or turf or whatever, and it just blew my mind. It was like if they had pictures of him playing on the moon, I could not have been sort of more bewildered by it. I was like, what is happening? And it seemed, and that was a weird thing as a kid, that he went so early. Like, he wasn't that old, like he was like 32 or I think when he went to the Cosmos. So I think, as Uli Hesse kind of talked about, he was a bit of an odd guy. He wasn't necessarily universally beloved. He was definitely appreciated. Like I said, I knew of his reputation. I hadn't seen him play all that much as a kid, but his reputation was basically redefining or inventing that position of sweeper, kind of a playmaker that is also that's very deep, basically, also a defender.
Libero.
Sometimes even libero in German. Sometimes even behind the defense, and very influential as a player, but as a public figure, kind of an oddball. Went to New York and was really into that by all accounts. If you see him talk about it in that documentary, Once in a Lifetime, his eyes glaze over. His time in New York City, whatever the footballing, soccer successes were, he had a good time in New York,
right,
in the late 70s, which one can imagine. There was probably a lot of cocaine involved, and
that's what we're here for. How much did Franz Beckenbauer do cocaine? That's what we're trying to talk about.
That's what we're not gonna we won't answer that. I wasn't there.
How hard did he party? So a couple of things,
but then no, sorry, let me just
you go.
But then he became kind of he got back into the German public eye after taking over the national team, which kind of had fallen into some disrepute. The 82 especially comes to mind. In 1982, the sort of scandalous performance against Austria, and there was just this very cynical kind of vibe around the national team. They're like, well, we're the very results driven. We're not here to inspire anyone. We're just here to get the result and go. So there was like bad vibes. And when he took over, he basically he turned that around. First in 86, made the final with a very sort of mediocre team that a friend of mine in Germany, her father was a big journalist for Der Spiegel, and he told a story that before the 1986 World Cup final, he was interviewing Franz Beckenbauer, and he all of a sudden started laughing because it's like, well, tomorrow we could be World Cup winners with Eder and Schwarzenegger, you know, like sort of denigrating the players at the time. But then in 1990, actually won the whole thing with really a very good, which is really a legendary team and a pretty convincing beginning to end kind of good performance. And that's the memory. That's my when I heard he died, that was the first memory that came to mind. And it was funny, I just saw on the Kicker homepage they kind of were talking about this. When after they won the final, he kind of wandered. He sort of wandered the field, the pitch by himself, in this sort of kind of forlorn way, like just sort of taking it all in and really kind of having a moment to himself to just sort of reflect, I guess, or process what just happened. And that was kind of yeah, I remember that. And that sort of stuck with me, that image of this guy kind of just by himself, like wandering around and kind of and so that's sort of the vibe I got from him. He's not the, you know, one of those like you know, the blowhards of the Hoeneß Rummenigge category who just, you know, keep wanting to be who keep thinking that their opinion matters more than anyone else's. Like he did not necessarily seek the public eye in the way that other people are doing. And yeah, just it definitely, he's one of those guys that kind of have been around my entire life, and kind of, so it definitely hit me a little bit when I heard about this today. It's like one of those is one of those people that just have kind of, yeah, I have a lot of memories of.
Yeah, I would like to have heard his opinion on what's going on these days again, you know. Yeah, no, it's very well spoken. I was listening to another podcast and I felt they, you know, they're doing it kind of quick, but I felt they didn't give him just deserved, or they didn't give him his due. Pretty much they were sheepishly being like, yeah, it can be argued that he's one of the most important people of German football, or something, that's what he said. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure, like, call me crazy, but Franz Beckenbauer is number one when it comes to German football, right? He's number one. You know,
I mean,
I get Fritz Walter, I get Sepp Herberger. I know he's of a different generation. But when it comes to Deutsches Fußball and German football, Franz Beckenbauer is star number one.
Well, he
right?
won the World Cup as a player and a coach. There's not that many of those.
Yeah. And he was a star since he was like 16. He's always been a star. He was like, he's the German Messi in that way. He's like, the world follows him. He's his own brand. And, you know, back before, up until about 10 years ago, when he was the Bayern München president, you know, people were asking his opinion. The limelight always followed him. He didn't have to seek it out. People were always asking him, following him, listening to him. You know, then he sort of retired and then got out of the limelight. Yeah, and let Uli Hoeneß and Rummenigge do all the speaking after that.
Right.
But no, in my mind, if we had to build a German football Mount Rushmore, Franz Beckenbauer would be the biggest face in the middle.
Oh,
right?
No question. Yeah, no question. I mean, you know, like you were alluding to, his reputation had a little tarnished due to these bribery allegations in relation to getting the 2006 World Cup to Germany. So there was a little bit, although in the end, they just let the clock run out on the statute of limitations. Like he never got convicted of anything. But yeah, there was definitely, I mean, you know, there's he's one of the many luminaries that try to get their fingers into the cookie pot of FIFA. So, but yeah, other than that, I think for sure he's the guy. There's two other people. Interestingly, Mario Zagallo, the Brazilian, who was the first one
Right.
to win, he also died 2 days ago.
2 days ago, yeah, very sad.
Apparently,
Huge
yeah.
legend of Brazilian football, yeah.
So he also, and the only other guy is Didier Deschamps. Those are the three people who won the World Cup as a player and coach. And
Mario Zagallo is a special category because I think 2002 being the exception, but up until 2002, Mario Zagallo was involved with all 4 Brazilian World Cup winning teams, all 4 of them.
yeah,
Because he was a player in 58 and 62, I think, maybe even a coach. He was the coach or the assistant coach in 70, and he was on the coaching staff in 94. So he was involved, like, he's his own category.
yeah.
But yeah, Franz Swan as a player, then later as a coach. And like
Didier Deschamps, did he really coach the team? Or but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're not here to discuss who coached it better, Franz in 90 or Didier Deschamps in 2018. But what I will say, a couple things to what you're saying, because I'm reading his book, so I have a little insight into some specifics.
Oh, great.
How apropos. The 1978 World Cup team really wanted Franz Beckenbauer. They were campaigning him for months upon months upon months.
They could have used him.
And Franz was like, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? But the Erdogan brothers of the New York Cosmos. Do you know who the Erdogan brothers are?
I do not.
They are the founders of the New York Cosmos before Warner Communications bought them. The Erdogans founded Atlantic Records. Atlantic Records, a huge record label.
Oh, Erdogan. Okay. Oh, yeah. Erdogan, like, ERTOG. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and not the modern Erdogan. These are two Turkish brothers who moved to New York back in the day and became huge record producers, and they were soccer fans. So they started.
Right. No, I remember this from the documentary.
Anyway, they couldn't lose because back then a World Cup squad was like a 3-month commitment. I think they had a month or 2-month long prep camp before the tournament or something, and pretty much they were looking at losing funds for 3 months, and they're like, we can't, like, we're touring the New York Cosmos. It's a summer league. So we can't lose funds for the summer. It's like we need fun. We spend a lot of money on him, and we need him for our games. So they nixed it, and he stayed at the New York Cosmos in summer of '78 because he was their new star, especially with Pele leaving in '77. So
we got Heinz Flohe instead for the 1978. Yeah,
deep pull. I'm gonna have to Google that guy.
And no, he was the Cologne. He was the Cologne guy. Yeah, and that team then famously lost to Austria 3-2 to when a tie would have gotten them into the semis.
But like you said, later he took over after Jupp Derval in '82. But what I was going to say is, let's talk a little bit about Franz and the scandals, because Franz said many. And this is a good Germany topic for you, so you could like help me out here a little bit.
Okay.
So, well, first and foremost, we got boys are back in the chat. Hans Wolf saying hello, Happy New Year, folks.
Happy New Year, Hans and Sebas. Good to see you.
Seb asks, yo, the New York Red Bulls and Forsberg. What do you guys think of New York Red Bulls and make them good again? That's right. We got Red Bulls talk. You know, we talked beforehand if we want to touch on MLS at all today. We'll see. Maybe later in the show. But we do want to give Franz Beckenbauer his due. And because the Bundesliga is kicking off this weekend, we want to maybe touch on the Bundesliga a little bit too. But I just want to talk about his scandal. So, yeah, what's a FIFA is one thing. I'll talk about that in a second. But reading his book, right, in his younger days, Franz Beckenbauer was
tax issues. Is that what you're talking about?
He had tax issues. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
But the big scandal was he had a young pregnant girlfriend he refused to marry. So this is where the Germany stuff comes into play. I've had stories. I'm sure your family has stories. Back in the day, in the, 40s, 50s, up to the 60s, and the 70s, there were a lot of unwritten rules about German culture. There weren't law, but the church, there was like church rules you followed. Like I've heard so many of these. Like if someone, like I think my great grandfather had a woman he was unwed to, and they forced him to marry her because it's like you have to be married, or stuff like that.
Right.
And in the 60s, young Franz had a pregnant girlfriend he didn't marry, and like that was a huge scandal back then because you just didn't do that. The German church doesn't allow that kind of stuff. Right? Like you probably hear stories like that all the time.
I'm the product of such a marriage. Yeah,
Oh wow, we're getting deeper there.
If you, I mean, you know, that's the truth of it. If you you know, my parents got married 6 months before I was born, and you know, my mother would joke that I was a preemie, but I was not. So
because they were avoiding the skin, because they try to convince their family that
yeah,
you weren't
it's I
conceived
mean,
till
you're right.
after the
That was
wedding.
definitely
Yeah.
that's what you would did if you were pregnant, then you got married. That's that's them's the rules. Yeah, for sure.
Also, when he moved to New York, this is just one of my many. He moved with his wife, his legal wife, but that was for show. He was dating someone else at the time. He was dating his girlfriend, his like secret girlfriend. So they moved to New York together, and in German press, the wife had to be like, "Oh, I'm so excited to move here with Franz," and blah blah blah. But the reality was they were separated. She wasn't moving to New York. She was just there for show for a couple weeks before she went back to München to live with the kids. And his girlfriend was then, they were bait and switching, and his girlfriend was going to move to New York, and she had a great time going to Studio 54 and living. Him and his girlfriend were living up in New York. Franz's kids were still back in München with his legal wife at the time. You know, that kind of stuff. That was very scandalous at the time. You know, nowadays celebs are like that. They were like that then too, but now I think there's less of a PR issue with that. But back then, it was such an issue that they had to lie to the press about it, pretty much, for stuff like that.
About
And,
him,
about his personal life, about him having
right.
girlfriends, and about him having kids out of wedlock. You know, back then the church, you know, that was not a thing you did in German society.
Yeah.
So those are that phase, and in my opinion, I look at that as being someone who's very ahead of his time, very hippie, right? Very, you know.
If you want to give him credit, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's definitely seems to be he was doing his own thing. He was not swayed by public opinion necessarily.
And the public didn't like that. They
well, it's also, I mean, the Germans have a weird. I was thinking about this recently, watching the Boris Becker documentary. The Germans have sort of a weird relationship with their celebrities, you know, like there's a you know, people get excited when like when Boris Becker was big in tennis internationally, won Wimbledon, of course the country went nuts. But there's also always this undercurrent of like, who do you think you are? Like, don't think, you know, don't think you're special. And I think he thought he was special a little bit. Like he was kind of you know, maybe thought that his celebrity or status or afforded him certain liberties, and other people didn't like that. That's a very German thing to not like that.
Especially with my I think my parents are from the same generation your parents are for. Showing off is a cardinal sin.
Yeah,
It's a cardinal sin. There's no showing off. And like you said with Boris Becker and Franz Beckenbauer, like they're celebrities, but like you said, they're not allowed to have flashy cars and show off and stuff like that. Or if they choose to do that, that's frowned upon. We're here in America. That's the point.
Oh, that's the whole point. Yeah, that's
right?
Very different. Very different. Yeah.
And I still struggle, like with my dad. I mean, we still struggle over that to this day.
That you like to flaunt your enormous wealth.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't care how big my debts are getting. Increase. Like my mom tells me a story when she was little. Her mother bought a new dress, and the neighbors said, "Hey, nice dress," or whatever. And my mom chimed in. It's like, "Yeah, we just bought it today," or something. And my mom got in so much trouble for that, because like they were not allowed to show off that they could afford a new dress or something, you know.
Really?
Yeah. We're talking late, we're talking the 50s here. Maybe that's more a look into my crazy ass family, but I'm just trying to say the idea of showing off is like frowned upon.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, I would say in Germany for sure, people will have opinions about the cars you have and the yeah.
But anyway, and then he had a tax issue. In the book, it talked about he sold his house and the German tax authorities raided his office. You know, his business manager was
much like Boris Becker as well.
Oh, the tax man, tax man, death and taxes. You know, and in Germany, taxes are higher than here in the United States. But Robert Schwan moved all his offices to Switzerland, where they were a little more protected. And he had all these weird rules about, because back then there was also laws against earning as a footballer. You know, the Bundesliga was new. They were newly professional, but they had in typical German fashion, slow and steady. Just like we see today, they're like, okay, we'll be professional, but we've got rules. You can't make more than X. You can't do this. You can't get sold. You know, they have all these rules to slowly inchworm their way out of the amateur level that they used to be involved with. And, you know, part of his move to the New York Cosmos was related to that tax stuff. The tax stuff was getting at him, and it was really heating up. And the opportunity to move to New York alleviated that in some way. In America, you pay way less taxes, and if his income came from New York, it kind of solved a lot of his tax issues. That's A. And B, in New York City, he could live a very anonymous life. Like a couple of German tabloid photographers would bother him every now and then. You know, he did a piece for the New York Times. According to the book, there was a 30-minute documentary that NBC4 did in New York in the late 70s about him. I would love to get my hands on that. That would be 70s, glorious 70s footage. I'd love to get my hands on. But, you know, in New York, kind of like how people go to MLS today, like Guillermo Barros Escalotto, who was a Boca Junior superstar, couldn't leave the house. And he moves to Ohio, goes to Kroger with his kids. No one knows who the hell he is. He lives a perfectly anonymous life.
Thierry Henry would take the path to Red Bull Arena a couple times.
Yeah, so he had New York, late 70s, a great party scene. He was just celeb enough where he had a good time but wasn't bothered terribly. And then, yeah, I guess he grew up a little bit. And then, like you said...
Got to hang out with Shep Messing. I mean, it's everybody's dream.
Everybody's dream. And then I think, like you said, there's that famous footage of him walking, which I just learned about recently, again, reading the book, when Lothar Matthäus was lifting the cup and Jürgen Klinsmann was running around, when the team was cheering and popping champagne, the cameras panned over to a Franz Beckenbauer in his suit, wandering alone, just with his hands in his pockets, in a very mission accomplished, German football is saved. You know, I was the father you were looking for. I did it. I delivered. Like, I am your savior. Not like in a I am your savior, but in a very much like, you know what, old man, you know, Uncle Franz took care of German football for all of us. And it's like, he won. He won the title twice, and he went full circle. He's now a mature adult. He's not the young whippersnapper he once was back in the day, you know, and it kind of was full circle for him at that moment.
Yeah, I wonder what was going through his head then. But it was a very poignant moment.
Yeah, yeah. And then later he was a coach and a manager and the president of Bayern München. Then the big German scandal, which I think is over exaggerated a little bit. Yeah, he bribed officials so that Germany could win 2006. That's how every World Cup happens.
Back in those days, it seems like that's the case. Yeah,
that was just the beginning of them.
That's how the game was played at the time. Yeah.
And then I thought it was a great World Cup in 2006. He did wonders. It's another great Franz thing, pulling that maneuver off to get the World Cup to Germany, which led to Das Reboot, which led to youngsters like Philipp Lahm and Bastian Schweinsteiger to move on and become the next generation. And South Africa was supposed to get that tournament, but they didn't get until 2010, and they struggled to keep up with standards even for 2010. So in my mind, it's a blessing in disguise. I mean, South Africa was a great tournament, and they just managed to pull it off, but they had a lot of stadium issues.
Except
and
for those vuvuzelas were horrible.
That's true. That was ridiculous. But for a country that just struggled to organize a 2010 World Cup, like, imagine if they won it in 2006. So in my mind, Franz Beckenbauer is a blessing in disguise. Had a few more years to get their act together.
All right.
Well, you know, Don't Speak Ill of the Dead. I want to shine a little light on that. But that was the big thing that got him in trouble a little bit. I think he was banned from FIFA activities for a couple of years or whatever all that nonsense was. And then we didn't see much of him after that. And that was Franz. So, yeah. You know, I just look at his scandals over the years and sitting here in 2024 as like, you know, a hip American dude who was covered in freedoms. just like, I don't know, just like, you know, I don't know. A lot of that stuff seems so ridiculous looking back on it to me. All right. And it's very indicative of the times, which the zeitgeist of Franz Beckenbauer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, rest in peace, Franz. He not only did he win, not only was he one of the great godfathers of German football, he was a big part of the NASL here in the United States, getting stuff going here. Fun fact, Bjorn.
Yep.
When the United States won the World Cup, they had 3 things that they had to commit to as part of the agreement. One was to launch a professional soccer league, which became Major League Soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what the other one was. Stadiums or something. I forgot. But then the third one was that Franz Beckenbauer was going to become the technical director of U.S. Soccer.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that never happened.
That never happened, but it was talked about in the day.
Oh,
and he could have held a bigger part of.
And then they got Klinsmann. They got Klinsmann instead.
Yeah, Klinsmann instead, who took the job and criticized the player pool and the timeline. And then after 8 years of collecting money, he's like, "Well, bye bye."
Yeah, not in the same category. Those two.
I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on Franz Beckenbauer?
I think that's it. Like I said, he was on my mind today.
Me too. Rest in peace, Kaiser Franz. What would you say in German to someone who passed away? How would you say rest in peace in German?
I would not. They are dead.
Well, I'm saying, is there a thing you say in German?
No, you say herzliches Beileid to the survivors, like you express your sympathy. No, we don't speak. I don't think we speak to the dead generally in Germany.
Interesting. Interesting. That's not a German thing. The dead are dead. It's like, get the hell out of here.
Rest in peace. I don't think we say. No, möge in Frieden ruhen. All right, let's go with that.
How do you say rest in power in German?
Rest in power. Oh, I know that even less. Möge in Macht ruhen. No, that's even worse.
Let's commit to that being the reality.
Nobody says that. Yeah.
But other than that, did you have a guten Rutsch zum neues Jahr?
Gut, mein Rutsch war gut. I'm at this point in my life not a big New Year's Eve guy. I was in Vermont. I was skiing all week, so when I'm in that mode, I go to bed like 10:30. I did not stay up till midnight.
Oh, you mean you even missed you missed the ball drop and all that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I do no longer feel the need to stay up.
Oh wow, that's even my old parents. They stay up for Dick Clark's Ryan Seacrest Presents.
All right, yeah, good
Jennifer
for them.
Lopez,
I mean, if I have a reason, if anybody's hanging out, like in this case, we went to our friend's house. We had some chocolate fondue. We did a little hanging out, but then eventually everybody's tired. I don't know.
I know, just like you said, a New Year is not really a New Year's. It's a couple days.
I feel it's a weird, like, I kind of gave up on New Year's Eve. It's just a difficult, it's difficult to. I mean, as a young person you party, but like now it's sort of like you're kind of. I don't know, the pressure of like staying up that late is. I mean, you're kind of a night owl. This is nothing for you, midnight. But at this point, I don't know.
Especially, I had no plans and I wasn't working. And literally 5 minutes before midnight, I went out of my house, walked to the bar down the street, looked inside at all of them, going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, yay! And they hugged and sang. And I was just there quietly outside of the bar watching them like this. It's just like, so I could be somewhere and be like, cool. And I went right back to my house.
Okay, yeah. So I recommend to you next year just go to bed.
Just sleep. All right. Well, maybe I will. The last few years I was working by myself. It's a little depressing, but you see the
Oh
fireworks.
man, that's tough.
My
I mean,
goal.
sometimes my kid, now my kids are teenagers. They go out, they're doing something. For a while, they wanted to hang out and do stuff, but like these days, especially in the when I'm doing a lot of daytime outdoorsy activity, it's quite difficult for me to stay up that late.
Well, but good you're doing stuff. My goal next year is to be invited to a party and be at a party for New Year. That's my
All
goal.
right.
It's been a long time since I've had something like that. And that is my goal. Wish me luck. Maybe we'll have a Schnitzel Boys
Good
New Year's
luck.
soiree. So you're definitely not into
don't stand outside of a bar looking. That's sad.
quietly looking right in front of the Scientology Celebrity Center here.
Oh my God! I'm glad you didn't go in there. At least those are the vulnerable moments where your life can turn.
I was this close to being like, maybe I do need a cult in my life. We'll see. Yeah, and cool. And resolutions, like, sort of ridiculous, or like going the new year. It's like all the resolutions are you listing stuff you wish you were better at, but you are who you are. So you're not going to commit to them. It's like a month pretending like you're going to change.
Well,
and in February, you're back to being who you're supposed to be. Maybe that's not an amazing inspirational speech I just said, but
this is not the place to come, clearly, for inspirational New Year's content.
But
we have one person went to bed, one person was sad.
Yeah, and we just admitted that there is nothing in the new year that's going to be any better than the last one. So, but what's changing?
I do feel generally optimistic always. Beginning of the year, sure. I do feel like things are going to be good. I don't know. I'm just like that.
Well, it's an election year. Trump is going to be president in November. How do you feel about that? I don't want to get political here, but I just got
well, it's sort of yeah. I
mean, I'm not. We don't have to comment on it, but I'm just saying it's a possibility that could be what this year holds for us. Mm-hmm. Or am I doing the calculations wrong?
Is it
November is election year, right? November 2024 is a new election.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It's gotta be, I think. And oh boy, am I not interested in that. God, when I transfer on my TV and press switch this, switch that, for whatever reason, new cable news is always the default in between of me switching stuff. So for 30 seconds of this, even 30 seconds of that stuff, I'm just like, I don't want to watch any of this.
Yeah, I don't think cable. I think cable news is not super useful in my opinion.
Yeah, streaming sports is way more useful.
Well, I mean, it's more entertaining.
For instance, the new year, even though not a lot changes, it's the new year, and we already have one or two things changing in the Bundesliga.
Tell us.
It's very, very interesting. Well, we have games this weekend, so they're coming. They're coming back.
The winter break used to be way longer.
Right. I think they're playing a little catch up, which I'm perfectly fine with. I love the fact that it's starting up again.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue the break was maybe a little too long back in the day, because I remember everybody was back at it, but the German Bundesliga was still a week or two away, and I'm like, how much time do they need? Yeah,
they would take a month off, and part of that I think was because of weather. Like they didn't have, back then it wasn't. Now most stadiums have heated turf, so they can melt any snow that may accumulate. But back then there was a lot of snowing, and so a lot of games couldn't be played. So I think that's why. But these days technology is there, plus it's getting warmer everywhere, so the break is shorter.
Yeah, which I'm perfectly fine with. The games this weekend, I'm reading online where it's like Gerassi is still at Stuttgart, and I was like, wait a minute, are we at a point where players can't even finish the season anymore? Gerassi was linked in the winter transfer market to leave Stuttgart. It's like you can't even hold him till the end of the season. Come on,
I feel like
players for you.
the January window is usually all bark and no bite, though, right? Like, I mean, it's like there's always a lot of because people just love transfer rumors, I guess. So there's always a
Right.
lot of anticipation to the after Christmas, like, oh, now it's silly season. But usually the big moves do not happen in January,
I think
despite all the speculation.
the agents have a relationship with the press, and they use it as part of their negotiating tactics. I guarantee you, planting a story about Guirassy maybe leaving in wintertime is just the agent being like, don't worry, we're setting up for a huge contract re-sign in the summer or something. So we'll see. But I would say the biggest piece of transfer news in the winter market was Jadon Sancho is making his way back
Coming back to Dortmund.
to Borussia Dortmund. What does that mean for Sancho? What does that mean for Dortmund? What does that mean for Man United? What does that mean for Gio Reyna? We got some movement. Borussia Dortmund have loaned back players in the past. Nuri Sahin came back. Shinji Kagawa came back. And the second time around is never as fruitful as the first time around.
That seems to be generally the thing, right? You can't go home again.
And Jadon Sancho's coming in pretty cold, He hasn't really been playing for a while. His time at Manchester United was very mixed, It never lit up the way it was supposed to.
Well, and then got sort of, it depends on who you ask. He thinks he was made a scapegoat by the coach, a disciplinary example. I guess we'll see this is a big, I think this matters. This is bigger for him than it is for Dortmund necessarily. Dortmund is pretty well positioned at that spot, I would say. But he definitely needs some playing time, and he needs to get his career back on track because it's off the rails. For Gio Reyna, this means he's going to play even less, right?
Yeah. And I would have no problem with Gio Reyna seeking a new club in this window. I would have no problem with him going to Gladbach or something, or wherever he needs to go, La Liga, Italy, maybe Serie A. He needs to find somewhere to go where he can play. I would have no problem for him leaving now.
But it's unlikely that that'll happen. Just because there's just never that many moves, and because the window is too short. Because you oftentimes, especially for these kinds of clubs, these transfers are chain reactions. You move somebody out, then you need to find a replacement. It's usually not just one player moving. It sets off like this chain of people, and the window is just too short for that. So oftentimes there's a lot that gets talked about and not that much happens.
Yeah, so that's the Jadon Sancho, Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund gets the brunt of my focus, I think, because they're finishing fifth. They just added a couple of new sort of coaches because there was stories about the players approaching.
Sven Bender, and who's the other one?
Also another Dortmund legend, Marcel Schmelzer.
What? Really?
No, hold on.
No, keep talking. I'll look
up all there. So there were rumors a month ago about the players led by, I think, Marco Reus going to Watzke being like, we need a coaching change. Then Watzke backed his coach and said, no, Terzic is our coach, which is odd. And then what they've done, maybe to alleviate the players or what, is they have fluffed up, they have reinforced Terzic's coaching support squad to add.
Yes, Sven Bender and Nuri Sahin, who you just mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, Nuri Sahin. Yeah. On the coaching staff, two great players for Dortmund back in the day. And or is Bender, he played for Leverkusen for many years, part of the Bender brothers. Right? Or am I mixing them up?
Well, there's Lars and Sven, but they both played for Dortmund at some point.
For Dortmund, okay. So there's that. So they added them as this coaching staff. We're like, well, what kind of change is that going to be? That's A. B, Terzic is still in charge. C, we now have Jadon Sancho. And D, the big news is that Watzke, who is just on the tip of everybody's tongue when it comes to German football these days, right? Because he sits on the board at the DFB, and he's part of the DFB changes, and he's the head of Borussia Dortmund. But he has announced that he will not re-sign his contract. he is stepping down as Dortmund CEO in 2025, which is in 2 years' time. So he's still
giving ample notice.
Yeah, he's doing the old Zepp Ladder. The old, like, I'll go. I've heard, like, I'll go, but I'll go in a little bit.
When I'm good and ready. Yeah.
maybe not as malicious, but and so I mean, what's going to be a more coveted job outside of the Bayern executive staff than the head of the Borussia Dortmund executive staff? So is it time for a new, younger, more progressive dude to take that role? And how will that influence Borussia Dortmund? It's something to keep an eye on.
Is Zuma just going to take over?
Maybe, or I've heard the Norm Karsten Kramer, which is his right hand man, who apparently is a little bit more progressive than Watzke. Watzke's a little older, a little more conservative.
It's not hard to be more progressive than Watzke.
Right.
It's by the way, I misspoke. Lars Bender never played for Sven Bender played for Dortmund. Lars Bender never played for Dortmund. He played for Leverkusen for most of his career. Started at 1860 Munich.
The forgotten mention.
Forgotten, yeah. The Bender, but yeah, they're twins, Lars and Sven, so you can be forgiven for confusing.
Another thing of Franz Beckenbauer I wanted to offer. That's a little out of our segment here, but Franz Beckenbauer was an 1860 München youth player.
Yeah.
And then someone slapped him in a game, and he's like, "Screw this! I'm going to Bayern." And him and his boys went off to Bayern, and they became the greatest German team in the 20th century in German soccer.
Yeah.
And Bayern München,
and at the time they were not a big deal. At the time they were, those.
So in addition to Franz Beckenbauer's accomplishments, he won 6 titles and blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but he did it with creating like his Bayern München team won 3 Euro Cups in a row. Or the Cup Winners' Cups in a row, or whatever it was called, and 6 Bundesligas. But they were a new team. It's like Beckenbauer, and then Sepp Maier, and then Paul Breitner, and then Gerd Müller, and like his boys. He created, and Uli Hoeneß was there too, I think, involved in that around that time. He was the leader of the generation of the team that turned Bayern München the club it is today, and in turn also was key figures on the national team when he won the '74 World Cup. I mean, the '74 World Cup's starting lineup was half the Bayern München starting lineup, right? I mean, it could be
true. Yeah, I mean, there were some other, Wolfgang Overath, Köln legend, Jürgen Grabowski, Frankfurt. But yeah, sure. No,
a lot of Gladbach players were involved too, with the Günter Netzer guys and all that kind of stuff.
Günter Netzer, did he start the? Anyway, now I got to look up the.
From what I understand, he was on the team, but he didn't play. I think because he was playing in Spain or something.
That's my memory, also.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is a big part of that, a core of that squad, Breitner, Müller, Beckenbauer, Maier, they were the Bayern Munich guys.
Yeah, Hoeneß, yeah, for sure. You're right. That's definitely true. Schwarzenbeck.
George Schwarzenbeck also, I think.
Yeah, Berti, Heinz Flohr, Heinz Flohr that you made fun of me for mentioning. He was on the bench. He was on the bench for the 1974 final.
And then 78.
He was in the squad.
Thankfully, the Erdogan brothers. Hans Flohr got his time to shine.
He was a big deal then.
And we're in a place now in German football where we kind of need a guy to step up and kind of fix the program, right? We're sort of in that again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for Philipp Lahm to
come. I don't know. We'll see. It's funny because we were talking about the 1990 World Cup and Franz Beckenbauer, being a big triumph for him and him having that moment on the field, and then afterwards he gave an interview. I remember this also after the game, that now with the reunified Germany, combining the talents of both countries would be unbeatable forever. Like it would be like just it's not quite come to pass.
They did okay. The 90s were okay. It's for the 90s. It's so funny with German soccer how the Jupp Derwall years were seen as such a disappointment. It's like, yeah, but they were World Cup finalists. Like a bad German team still made it to the finals back then. And then in the 90s,
Derwall didn't make the
I'm talking 82.
Oh, in 82. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
And
And
he won
the
won the Euro in 1980. Yeah.
Right. Like seemingly that was a good period of German soccer, even though people were,
now,
like you said,
sure.
disillusioned with
I
the
mean,
national
in
team.
78, they were they were tying 1 goal away from making the semis.
And then we see in the 90s they can't break the quarterfinals, and that's like very unheard of for them. And now we can't even break the group stage.
Yeah, no, true. Yeah, no, it's true.
It's gotten worse.
It's true.
But anywho, back to what we're saying. So Watzke stepping down with Dortmund. Watzke in German soccer, he was credited as saving Dortmund back in the 90s in their financial troubles, which is great. And he commits to financial security first and foremost over title success. And I think that's what he's committed to. And you look at a team like Borussia Dortmund, their bottom line is healthy these days. But they've had the world's best players.
They have all this transfer income.
And they just can't break top. They're struggling to break top 4. I mean, not struggling, but they're a top 4 club. And it's like, you should be winning titles, right? Shouldn't they be winning titles? Shouldn't they be really going after Bayern München? But, so with a new, maybe younger, more progressive CEO in the future, maybe we'll see a shift. I don't know. All I know is that eyes are on Dortmund and stuff's going on in Dortmund.
All right.
Do you have anything else to add about? You said other stuff.
I don't think so. Germany's been quiet. We have that. The Bayern and Hoffenheim on Friday. That's the first game of the new.
It's the first ever Bundesliga game in the year 2024.
Yeah, that's it. And then not a lot of real bangers. Everybody is. Bochum at home against Bremen on Sunday. That's a big one. But everybody else, there's not a lot of really good. Maybe Leipzig versus Frankfurt, but it's a lot of little teams against big teams. Augsburg playing Leverkusen, Darmstadt playing Dortmund, Gladbach playing Stuttgart. So, starting sort of easing into the new year.
Well, Union Berlin watch is still on. They're hosting Freiburg. We'll see how Union Berlin is faring with their new coach, relatively new coach. And another big bit of news in the Cologne universe is they finally got rid of their coach. And they have a new coach going into the new year. I know the writing was on the wall with that. I always forget his name. The guy with the hat, right?
Yeah, Thomas Reis's friend. Oh my God!
I don't want to say Steffen Baumgartner.
Steffen Baumgart. That's it.
His name? Okay, that's the guy. I always mix up sometimes.
Yeah, no.
Steffen Baumgartner, he was a
not
fan
Baumgart.
favorite.
Baumgart.
No. Baumgart.
Not Baumgartner. Baumgart.
Steffen Baumgart. He was a club. He was,
Timo Schulz. Timo Schulz is the new one.
We got a new guy named Timo Schulz taking over. So we'll see if the coaching change is fortuitous for Köln as well as it is for Union Berlin.
They were talking to Lukas Podolski for the coach. Maybe he's the guy. To save German.
I mean, he's a Köln super legend. Köln was always where he could succeed.
Anytime he wants to take over that place, people will go nuts.
Like Frankie Klopas is the Chicago Fire. Lukas Podolski is the Köln. FC.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
So you said you wanted to save MLS transfer talk
till next week, right?
Yeah, you don't want. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we're talking just. I would love to talk Red Bull, Seba, but right now,
Emil Forsberg is going to Red Bull, New Jersey, and Timo Werner going to Tottenham Hotspur.
That's right. I did see that, and I'm like,
have
they not been watching the Bundesliga?
That's what I said in the group chat. It's like they were like, "Oh, Timo for Spurs. What were you think?" I was like, "Well, they were picking Forsberg over him in Leipzig, and he's going to Red Bull New York. He's not going to the Prem." So yeah, I don't know about that one. That was a bit of a head scratcher. And then they were Eric Dyer to Bayern, equally mysterious. Like, what's the idea there?
Now, like I alluded to earlier, this could just be agents and like press and writers working.
No, but the
stuff.
Timo Werner thing is on. That's official. That is not a
Eric
rumor.
Dyer seems to be also pretty tight, right?
Eric Dyer is also. I've heard that pretty confidently.
Wait a minute. Timo Werner, that's official. Timo Werner going to Tottenham.
I mean, it's Fab Romano says that that's as good as official, right?
Okay. Tottenham-bound Timo Werner flies back to Leipzig's training camp. Wait a minute. Well, yeah. Well, it's weird. Yeah, I guess he did his physical in Leipzig, and now he's going. Huh? Yeah, we'll see what that does. Timo Werner is a sheep who's lost his flock. No, what's the term? Timo Werner
he needs fixing.
He needs to find.
And maybe maybe Ange Postecoglou he is the right coach for him. He seems like he would be his kind of player, but yeah, I don't know. We'll find out. I remember the French cartoon. I don't know. I've probably mentioned this, but I remember this French cartoon years ago that was depicting a guy in front of a firing squad about to be executed, and he said his last wish, I would like Timo Werner to shoot.
Poor Timo. Well, Timo, if you go to Tottenham, I wish you the best. I mean, if you can't find your footing again at Leipzig, the club where you're from, and a club where the pressure is probably not that high compared to a Tottenham, and if you can find your form, Tottenham,
I think it's this idea. You know, you go back to a place where you had success in the past. It doesn't usually work, right? Like there's not a lot of examples where that works well.
Can Jadon Sancho learn something from?
Yeah, I mean that's why I'm saying we're not super optimistic about Jadon Sancho and Dortmund.
No. Well, that's the fun of player transfers. We never know. Will Omir Fernandez rip it up with Colorado Rapids with Georgi Mihailovic and Zach Steffen? You know, that's really
Georgi Mihailovic is interesting. We'll talk about it next week, but he's sort of another cautionary tale for mid-career MLS players who are just so desperate to go to Europe.
Miles Robinson. I'd love to touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, Miles what does Robinson. That mean? Is Matt Miazga's done?
Or is Miles Robinson done? I mean, I do want to talk about this, but Seba asks, it's going to take a whole hour. Let's save this for
next week. It is all right.
Next week we'll back in the MLS or something because
I support the under 1 hour podcast in 2024.
Franz Beckenbauer deserved some time, and in regards to that, Germany reserved its time. So this is the Germany hour. We are the Schnitzel Boys after all. We will talk MLS when it gets sooner to MLS time, which is going to be rapidly approaching.
Yeah, preseason is starting. Couple weeks.
Yeah. All right.
Matt Doyle is already writing roster analysis on the website. I'm like, wow, that's that guy needs more time off.
For the New York Red Bulls, despite the one big signing, they're just getting rid of a lot of players. Like the rumors are Luquinhas is going to Brazil. I support those rumors. So right now the moves seem positive.
Troy Lesane got a job at DC United.
Why did it have to be DC United, Bjorn? Why did it have to be? Could have been anywhere else. Dean Smith at Charlotte FC. There's stuff to talk about.
We'll talk about it.
Save it for next time. Dismissed.
Bye.